All right. Hello. Okay, everyone. Hi. Thanks for coming to Cathouse Proper. Tonight we have Renée Cox in conversation with Elliott Jerome Brown Jr.
Sound like a boxer.
I know, right? I know.
Rumble in the jungle. And
Weighing 175.
yeah, Elena Simone back in the back there, who's co-organized the exhibition. Renée Cox, Roots Returned, which is the name of the show, but as you'll see, there's only one work in the show. So it's Renée Cox, Roots Returned, but this piece is titled Origin, that is behind us, and it's from 1993, re-editioned this year, and there's a story behind it. I mean, Renee's going to tell you all about it. I can give a brief outline.
Okay, go ahead.
Just to get it out of the way.
But, do it.
Yeah, the panel on the left there was originally exhibited in 1994 at Marcia Tucker's new museum for the Bad Girls show, if anybody remembers that. And it was a big sensation, the piece, and at the time it was titled Yo Mama as an individual work. But it was always meant to be part of this diptych here. So I guess Renee will explain a little bit, but Marcia Tucker, we had a studio visit. She was a young artist. You know, she needed the exposure, wanted to show the work. Obviously, it's powerful on its own. And the theme for Bad Girls, as you say, very wittily.
Didn't include any penises. So.
Except Sue Williams' piece. You remember that one? Try to be more accommodating.
Right.
I always remember.
Yeah, but no overt penises.
Yeah.
Like that, yeah.
Right.
And with the photo reality of it, the photograph being, it's like real. I was just saying earlier, like if it was a painting, you can get away with a lot of stuff.
Right.
But when it's a photo, people really get kind of freaky about it.
Right.
They think it's like real. It's going to jump off the wall or something. So it's a rather bizarre thing. I've had sales blocked by women who were like, "No, we don't want her in our house."
Right.
And I'm like, that's crazy. It's a photograph. It's an object. It's not like a Dorian Gray kind of thing, where I'm gonna enter into your life. Yeah. So anyway, Marcia Tucker, I was at the Whitney Independent Study Program. Marcia Tucker came through, and she was looking, because the Whitney program is kind of like, I call it like a little debutante ball. So it's like a coming out party for young artists. And I had the 4x5 in my studio, so she saw the 4x5, and immediately she was like, I want it for the Bad Girl show, period. She's like, blow it up. So, okay, fine. So both of us decided, okay, 7 feet, good. And David was next to it, but she poo-pooed David. It was like she didn't need David. So she just, cut him. And that was the end of that. And it was the end of the conversation, too. And I didn't really fight for David because, as David pointed out, I was a young artist, hungry and whatnot. And I wanted to, see my work out there. So I was like, okay, fine. So that's how that happened. Have you had any experiences like this, Elliott?
No.
Okay.
No, I haven't.
Yeah, we actually cheated.
Yes.
I went to his studio yesterday. I was there for 2 hours. Should we talk about our bougie suburban roots or something? Or?
Before we get there,
okay.
I figured a nice way to start would be talking at first about why self-portraits for you, because I also started working in self-portraits, but you kind of continued.
Right.
Working.
Because it's easy for me to work with myself.
Right.
And I'm always available.
That was my reason.
Yeah. Although I have to admit, when I was in grad school, I had, Marvin Heffelman, and he was like, don't tell people that. I'm supposed to camouflage it and say, I don't know, some other sort of thing. And this is before selfies and stuff like that. So it's purely self-portraiture. But no, it's for me, it was just, it just seemed like the natural thing to do. And I started doing self-portraiture when I was an undergrad at Syracuse in college. And, what better person to work with than yourself?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
extremely accommodating, on time.
Right.
Let's see, looks the way you want them to look.
Right.
You don't have to make any changes.
Already paid.
Exactly. They're happy, and it's just easier. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also stronger too, I think, because it, like, then you kind of really own that image. And also too, because my background was in fashion. So I had been dealing with lots of models all along for like the 10 years before. So that was another thing too.
Actually, before we even dig deep, maybe, this is a selfish question. Because I also wanted to work in fashion, like when I started working in photography. But that's not really so much an interest now, even though that'll sometimes be something I'll do.
Right.
But why were you working in fashion?
Oh, I love fashion. I was a total like BAP. You know, Black American Princess, or Jamaican American Princess. Totally close.
Not a Jewish American princess.
No, they don't own the J.
Right.
So I said Jamaican American Princess. And I was at Syracuse, which is like Jap heaven.
Right.
It was like full of Japs. So, you know, we all got along and whatnot. And I always loved fashion from the very beginning. I mean, I hate to say it, I'm still carrying around like my little fashion magazine collection from like the 1970s. It's like ridiculous. Why I still have it. But I have like a whole like trunk in my storage of all these magazines from then. I was sort of obsessed by fashion. I just liked it.
So why'd you stop?
Oh, well, okay. After a certain point, fashion can get a little bit, how do I want to say? Okay, so I'll say it like this. In my 20s, I enjoyed it. Because I could talk to you about a pair of shoes for 45 minutes. And, you know, it was like, that seemed really normal. But as I got older, pushing 30, and had my first child, it seemed frivolous for me to spend 45 minutes talking about a damn shoe. Like, who cares at the end of the day? You know, you give it 5 minutes, that's cool, and we move on. So I didn't find it appealing. And then I had a situation that made it very clear to me that I needed to get out of fashion. And that situation was, I was at this restaurant, Jerry's, for you older folks in the crowd, in Soho. And I was with the people from Macy's, because I used to do Macy's, like, big full-page New York Times ads, like on Sundays, like in the regular part of the paper. So I was with those people, and Ellen Von Werthen, and like some other people, and we're all there, and, you know, yak, yakety yak. And then at one point, I have this overwhelming feeling that I feel that I need to share with them. And I say, my God, today is the most incredible day, because Nelson Mandela has been released from prison after, 27 years, and, you know, fighting for his rights, and that nasty apartheid that they had in South Africa. And there was a pause, and they just looked at me. And then they said, but Donald and Ivana are getting a divorce. Because that was what was on the front page of all the papers at that time. And I was just like, oh my God. And from that point on, I was like, okay, I can't do this. Because you would see Donald Trump out, you know, and I'm saying that same kind of like weird hair and stuff. You know, I mean, like he would be like a fixture on sort of, you know, nightlife. And it was like, how can you care about Donald and Ivana like getting a divorce when this man did this like really important thing? And that was the moment where I sort of realized, okay, I need to do something else. And then the other thing was too, I was like, what's my legacy? What will I show my children? Like now, let's say. Some old yellowed magazines, you know, that are like breaking off as you turn the page. And then I'm like, ooh, I shot Iman, ooh, I shot Joan Severin, I shot this one, Nancy Decker, boom, 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 all the great girls of the 80s. And then my kids would be like, but they're old now. And who cares? So it was like, oh no, that's horrible. And then the third thing was, as I'm shooting fashion, I would always have the editor over my shoulder talking about the next shoot. So I'm like, oh my God, I'm putting like all my energy, my heart and soul into this shoot, and now you're talking to me about the next shoot, which I'm grateful for, that I do have a next shoot with them. But I'm like, no, I want to be able to like really live in this shoot for a minute, because you're pictures only have a 28-day lifespan.
Right.
That's it, and then they're dead. Then it's garbage, as far as they're concerned. So those were the reasons why.
Now, were you working fashion when you were also going to Syracuse? No, SVA?
No, well, that was sort of the transitional point
Into
fine art. Because when I started within like thinking about, okay, let me be an artist, it was the days where nobody was interested in your personal work. And you had to have, some kind of credentials. So that's when I realized, okay, I need to get an MFA.
Right.
And I had just had my first child. And I decide right after that, like almost after I give birth, that I should go to grad school. Okay, perfect timing. Yeah. But so I did.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You went to Glamour so that you can get certain kind of access, and you went to SVA to
Well,
get another kind.
Glamour, okay, the trajectory is this.
Right,
I graduate from Syracuse. I move to New York. I become the model, okay? I was with this agency called Stewart at the time. But modeling, I'm a little short, okay? So that wasn't so easy. And then also, I was running around having to tell people I was 16. Which, I mean, I look 16. But after they talked to me for 5 minutes, they're like, that's amazing. Like, how could you be 16? Like, you've done all this stuff. Like, you've lived in Italy and this and that, And then I'd be like, no, I'm not really 16. It's okay. Yeah. So that was the first thing. So after I was doing the modeling, and then my very, very first job was at Fiorucci. Again, for any of you know, Fiorucci was, like, it's in that Sister Sledge song. Gucci, Fiorucci, it was like the store over by Bloomingdale's. And then from there, in my little running around, hi, I'm here kind of situation, I went to Glamour magazine with my model portfolio, and they were looking for the girl that just graduated from college and was looking for a job in New York. So, c'est moi. And they hired me. And it was supposed to be like a 2-day shoot with Bridget Lancôme, and it ended up being a 4-day shoot. Okay, so then they got to know me and whatnot, and Phyllis Posnick was on it, and Gabby Longy, and all these people. And I used to dress really crazy. I'd wear like fuchsia harem pants with one teal shoe and another, fuchsia shoe, and then like blue eyeshadow and shit. I mean, like a Technicolor, maybe now disaster, but then it was kind of like, no, but it was cool. It was fun, right? So then at the end of the shoot, they asked me, have you ever considered working for a fashion magazine? But now I got to back up a second, too. Because when I got out of school, while I'm doing the Fiorucci, the modeling, and all this other stuff, my idol is Deborah Turbeville, okay? So in those days, you had, the phone book. So you would just simply let your fingers do the walking through that, and you'd find somebody's number and address and stuff. So, and also in those days, we didn't have cell phones. So the department store was like your little office, like the women's lounge, because they had payphones. No, for real, right? So it's like they had payphones and a couch, and it was very nice, very lovely. There was attendants there cleaning up all the time. So it would be like your little office, and you'd have like all of your schedule and stuff in your Filofax. And so I'd called Deborah Turbeville numerous times. And she's like, oh no, I don't have time. Sorry, I can't see. I don't have time. So then finally I sort of put two and two together, and I call her, the 10th time. And I say, oh, I'm at Bloomingdale's. Oh, really? I live 2 blocks away from Bloomingdale's. Okay, I can give you 5 minutes. Come over, right? I go over there. I'm there 4 hours, okay? Like, she just gave me the whole game plan, basically. And she said, well, and I knew this, they're not going to hire you as an assistant because you're a woman. And even one of my very good friends at the time was this guy that was working for Bill King, who was like a huge fashion photographer. And he's like, well, you can't lift up a 300-pound tripod case. And I'm like, neither can you. Okay? But I know one thing for sure. Once I bend over to even try to do that, there's going to be like 10 guys here to help me. Okay? But he wasn't really interested by that. So he's like, he's not going to hire me. And Deborah Tuberville said the same thing. She goes, no, you're not going to get hired. She goes, what I did, and it wasn't even that she did it, but she just sort of ended up there, and then it kind of evolved for her. She was working at Mademoiselle, which at the time was a Condé Nast magazine, as an editor. And one day, one of the photographers who did the front of the book stuff, the smaller pictures, the smaller stories, didn't show up or whatever, and they said, hey, Deborah, can you shoot it? So she shot it, they liked it, and then it went from there. So when they asked me in the trailer, you know, from Glamour, if I would ever consider working for a fashion magazine, I didn't have to think twice. I was like, yeah, sure. You know, I can't even type, you know what I'm saying? It's like, but I was like, yeah, sure, no, I'll do it. And so I worked there for like about, I guess, almost a year and a half, 2 years before I got married. And it was a great platform. And as I was saying to you yesterday, we didn't use the word platform because it didn't really exist like that. But it was a great place for me. All I had to do was just go, like, even when I got married, while I was at Glamour, I could call like Tex of Israel, which is like a swimwear company, and say, I need a cover-up or whatever. And then I got married in, and it's like, it was a black and white, asymmetrical, like little sort of mini dress, because my husband's white, so I wanted to do like a black and white thing. And we got married at City Hall. But all I had to say is like, hi, it's Renée Cox, and I'm from Glamour Magazine, Condé Nast, and everybody gives me anything that I want. So I use that to get models in, for me to shoot, to get clothes in. I mean, I worked it for points, basically. Right. I mean, like, my superiors would come in and they're like, who are all those people in the waiting room? Who are they waiting for? Oh, Renée. Like, yeah, like, they were, like, a little through with me, but, you know. Right. But I got what I needed. Mm-hmm. So that's always been my objective. Get what you need to get when you need to get it.
Mm-hmm. You know? And then when you got to grad school, you were mentioning that the work kind of shifted, and that begins a kind of legacy, this deep introspection, using your own body to interrogate where you're at right then.
Well, because I had this kind of fucked up, like, you know, I mean, I grew up in Scarsdale, okay? So, not that I knew where I was coming from and, you know, and everything like that, but I grew up around all these white people. You know, like in high school, I'm listening to, like, you know, New Riders of the Purple Sage, you know, Panama Red. I mean, I was like, you know, you would have shot me. You know what I'm saying? Like, what's wrong with this black girl? It's like, but I didn't know any better. Mm-hmm. So I had to have, like, a learning experience. So when I got to SVA, the first semester I'm there, I'm, like, shooting this stupid friend of mine, which I'll explain why she's stupid later. And I'm shooting, like, body parts and stuff, you know, blah, 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 and constructing these, like, totems and stuff, which had nothing to do with anything. It was just a visual kind of thing. And I didn't really know what the hell, I mean, I knew what I was doing, but I didn't know what I was doing in terms of, you know, like art. And anyway, long story short, this stupid friend of mine invites me to meet some Guidos uptown and whatnot. And, you know, I said to her, like, I'm in my studio, I'm not all dolled up, I'm not wearing, like, heels and a black little dress, you know, I got paint all over me and everything. No, come, right? So I go, I meet these people, and basically, and it never ever happened to me before, right? They give me like the kind of once over, you know, like, no, you know. And then their lead person basically says, oh, okay, you know, you can go now. That's what I can go now. I've never been dismissed in my life. What the fuck are you talking about? I was like in shock. I was like, what? You know? And this is like the beginning of the cell phone, so I have that big Panasonic cell phone that's like this and like that. It's like a little mini suitcase. So then I'd call my stupid friend that invited me, and I'm like, what the fuck is this, you know what I'm saying? And in between that time, like, she's actually now at the restaurant, and I'm in my car, I'm in my Jeep, because I'm always in my car, and I pull up in front, and it was on Columbus, and you could see out, and I could see in. And then now, since she's there with these Guidos, and they want to fuck her, right? They're now, the whole scene has changed, and she's like, come in. And I'm like, no, bitch, I'm not coming in there. Come out. You know what I'm saying? So she comes out, and I'm like, look, if you're my friend, you got to come with me, get in the car, and we're going. And she's like, no, but they have cocaine and whatnot, and the main dinner, and they have champagne, and they're like, they have money, and blah, blah, blah. So I was like, okay, that's it. Didn't talk to her for 7 years. But I was just like, no. But I actually have to thank my stupid friend, because that was the spark that got under me. And then I was at the Schomburg, and I'm going through the microfiche, the rolls, and I'm checking out all this stuff around, African-American history. I'm finding out about lynchings, that there was a lynching even in 1980 in Central Park, and all this stuff. And then I just became like this militant, like, I don't know, pseudo, like, not Black Panther, but you know what I'm saying, but really like militant. And then it was funny because I was invited to go to Syracuse for a show. And it was like one of those, what do you call it, Black weekends, CBT weekend, Colored People's Weekend, whatever. It's like homecoming, but it's like just for like Black and Hispanic. So it's like I go back and like all the Black people that I knew from my years, like I can't believe it. Like you've changed so much. Because like now I'm the one, like they're all older and they've like settled down. And I'm like, no, this is what we got to do. We got to put this message out here. And it's like I did like a complete, 360 on that. So, because also this is, this is gonna make me look bad, but it's okay. Because when I first get to Syracuse, like the first month that I'm there, I have a friend who's gay, who's white, who comes to visit me. And he stays in my room, right? So like no big deal. And at that time it was weird, like I didn't even know he was gay, except for the fact that he would pay me $10 to get in Blue Boy magazine. But he used to ride horses, so it was kind of like, all the guys who rode horses, they were always a little bit, something, whatever. So, anyway, so he comes, he spends the weekend, and on Monday, I'm walking through the quad, and some sisters come up to me, like about 4 of them, like it was like an attack almost, and they're like, the brothers want to know what's up with you. And I said, I don't have any brothers. I'm the only child. And then they were like, oh, God. Yeah. This is a lost soul here. Yeah. So anyway, that was my story. But I've come around. Yeah.
Right. So what was that project what work did you begin to pursue first? That was the stuff that you were making in the Bronx.
Yeah, the first one I did was Liberty in the South Bronx and Do or Die, which was a reference to like we broken the chains of slavery, but we're still in this huge mess. And I actually shot it where I shot Gang Star's album cover, Step Into the Arena, which is just like next to Metro North. And also, it was sort of the first time that I was in the nude outside, too. So we get there. I go there with, like, 5 of my mates from, grad school. And I find my mound of trash that I'm going to stand on. I've got my Converses on. But after I started to shoot, then the next thing happens, where there's the Jeep that has, like, the 4 black guys in it. And, the beats are like pounding and pounding. And they see me standing naked in this field. So, like, they back up, I don't know, at 60 miles per hour and, like, come, sort of running over. So I kind of, like, reacted like, I don't know, some Jewish woman in, an elevator. It was like, oh, my God, like, what's going to happen to me? I'm going to be attacked or something. But I learned a very good lesson because those guys, they came over. And they were like completely like respectful because they had also talked to people that were sort of like in the audience, if you want, because there was like 40 people watching me do this. And they talked to the people, and the people told them what I was doing and what my intention was, and so on and so forth. And when I finished, they came over and they were like, "Yo, sis, respect." And I almost started crying because I was like, oh man, I can't believe I had this asshole thought about them, And that really changed a lot of things around for me too. One from that perspective, and then the other perspective of I realized the power in being nude. You know, you're better off being completely naked than wearing, I don't know, like, you know, short shorts and a halter top or something. Because when you're completely naked, there's nothing anybody can do to you.
Maybe.
You know? Well, no, but I'm saying there's not that, there can't be that violation, you know what I'm saying?
There's no suggestion anymore.
Exactly. You know, it's like, here it is.
Right.
I mean, first they think you're crazy because you're there totally naked.
Right.
So they're like, oh, okay. Like they back up. So that was like when I realized the power behind that.
And that was also kind of like, I guess compared to the later series that you end up doing, you're doing a lot of, what would you call it, flipping the script. But with that project, there wasn't so much of that. It was just kind of like looking at, you know,
It was kind of like looking, it was like, yeah, I was looking at the history and then trying to sort of do like a revisionist thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because as I was saying to Elliott yesterday, my work from the very beginning, it's always been about the empowerment of black bodies, black females. I'm not interested in being the victim, even though I know that's a much more lucrative game to play. But that doesn't sit well with me, you know. So it's like I'm always, you know, returning the gaze back out, and I want to create images that are powerful, that little black girls could see and they could be like, okay, I can do that. I could be that. That's what really stokes me and interests me. And I personally feel a responsibility to doing that. Some of my colleagues don't. It's okay. But I do. So.
I have a question. I didn't know your work, and I'm really happy to know it now. And you guys actually don't know each other personally, so you're just getting to know each other too.
No, we have a mutual friend.
Yes.
Right. So I'm just curious what it is that in his work that you know, caused you to take an interest.
Well, I think just the newness of it, and it's a new generation, and some of the stuff. I mean, I did have to go to the Instagram. But that's what you all do, so it's okay, you know, to get like a showcase. And I was like, oh, wow, okay, this is cool. I like it. And
I have a website.
right. I'm sorry I didn't go there. Like most people don't go to my website either, they go to Instagram.
I spent like a whole day on yours once.
Yeah.
Before you asked.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm older. I'm the elder. Like you should have. How would I have known about you until Gio told me about you?
Yes.
We have a friend, Gio Valentine, who's like who assisted me for a minute, and it's Gio who turned me on to him.
I see.
Yeah.
Right.
And because there's like this little, maybe you can tell us about this contingency of young black photographers that are coming up and. I mean, not the new Vanguard or anything like that, but I'm just saying, but just, you know, like you and Gio and
I can talk about me.
talk about you. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, I guess.
You went to NYU.
Yes, I went to NYU. I studied photography at NYU. I was making self-portraits. I wanted to work in fashion. I kind of stopped making self-portraits when I realized also I didn't want to like be like victimized because it just felt really easy to perform like victimhood like when I was alone. Like whereas you found it very easy to perform empowerment. But when just me on me, I was like, you know, kind of gravitating towards a certain tone and I wasn't there anymore. So I was like, this just doesn't actually make sense to do anymore. But then also my life was like starting to change. Like I had, you know, not into the life, but like I was working at American Apparel. Most of the friends that I had there were like black, not working in art or like doing necessarily anything creative or just weren't talking to me about whatever it was, the creative that they were doing. And then my life had just begun to change a bit. So I started photographing other people. But then when I started photographing other people, immediately I was like, hold up, like I don't want to like represent other people. Like I don't want to like take responsibility for like another person's thing, whatever that thing might be. So then I started turning the bodies away from the camera and was like, you know, they're still there and we still have a relationship with each other, but that doesn't necessarily need to be professed or championed by whatever's in the photograph.
Right.
So this other thing began to blossom and I'm still kind of within that space.
Right.
Yeah.
But there's still
Whereas Giancarlo, you know, this is so weird. Giancarlo like works more like within like a like a journalistic way,
right,
or like in a documentary way. And he once said to me that he doesn't actually think of himself as doing anything necessarily innovative. He feels like he's doing something like honorific and like keeping up a tradition of a certain style of photography. So here are these folks, mostly black people. He really only photographs black people of various class strata. And here are these people that I want to, you know, just kind of continue their legacy, and I'm going to make sure that photo looks impeccable.
Right.
So I'm interested in that as an element of photography, but that's not so much where.
But now you're doing your family too.
No.
Well, I mean, well, what I saw yesterday.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, my family does show up in the work, but they show up in like, you know, often very like fictional ways. They're like, you know, they lend their likeness to me for me to like fictionalize.
Because there's a shot you have on Instagram that was like, I mean, the color's like freaking incredible. But I couldn't really figure out exactly. There's hands on the side and stuff like that, and I couldn't really figure out exactly what it was. You know which one I'm talking about? It's like pretty early up in the feed. And it's like with a sort of bluish purple color.
Oh, that's an album cover.
Is it?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
for someone's album.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that was like fierce. I was
Thank
just
you.
like, what is that? You know?
Right.
But the color and the energy behind it was like captivating.
Yeah, I like layers.
Yeah.
Like things on top of each other.
Right.
Collaging in the frame.
Yeah, no, that was like really cool.
Right.
Yeah. So did you take a note, like say from Lana, like when you're saying you're dealing with the back?
Oh, right. I mean, Lorna is definitely really. I felt like a kinship with Lorna when I was thinking about like works that I wanted to make, and when I came across her work, and specifically how she was using text in the work.
Right.
That was really impactful to me. Like, you know, here's these figures that I had assumed were all her, but I got, you know, I learned that eventually that they're not.
That was it.
But there were a series of people, and they like stood in for, you know, these much larger ideas, but also these like folk tales in a way. So I like, you know, Lorna's
Right.
mythological presence.
Got it.
Yeah, but I would say what really ended up like moving my work while I was in not grad school, while I was in undergrad. Like I said to you yesterday, I was looking at Dina Lawson's work,
Right.
and just looking at how she offered people dignity, or just offered people a space in the image that wasn't as like, you know, done up as,
Right.
you know, other people who, like someone like Kehinde Wiley, who is representing people in this Eurocentric way, or like repurposing black figures within a Eurocentric way.
Right.
Dina was doing it in like, you know, this is a social setting that these folks belong to, and their gestures also belong to this setting too,
Right.
but they're presented with this monumentality. So that like, I don't know, there was like a certain kind of flexibility that I liked in the figures that she had. Like they were literally kind of like bending
Right.
over each other. And I was like, oh, I like that.
Right. Whereas Candy gives you like a 1-2 punch.
Right.
Yeah, it's like boom.
Right.
And it's like,
Yeah. A lot of
and basically
swords.
flipping the script. Yeah.
Right.
Which I've always said, I mean, I've done that too, and it's a great strategy for black young artists because white people really relate to it. Because you're like, oh wow, that's from our art history book.
Right.
They recast it
Right.
with their own little vibe. That's so cool. You know, they love it.
Right.
You know.
Well, what if you what is the use of that?
What's the use of
having
that?
white folks relate to the work.
Well, I mean, in the beginning, it's to get the attention.
Right.
You know, I mean, now I don't give a damn. But I'm saying in the beginning of my career, when I was unconscious and unenlightened, yeah, I cared about that then.
Right.
Now I'm like, no, I don't need it.
Yeah.
You know? So, I mean, I've evolved.
Right.
You know.
So while we're there talking about unconscious and perhaps uncritical states, that is also something that I guess we shared in that we grew up in suburban environments that encourage that kind of being.
Right.
So
well, you had
go
it
first.
better. You had a 50-50 situation.
Right.
I had 4 and 250 people. So it was kind of like it wasn't that I was lost. I mean, I always knew I was black, obviously, and my parents were very clear about that. They were Jamaican and whatnot, so there wasn't that kind of thing. But it was just like that was just like my orientation. You know, like I said earlier, you know, I was listening to New Riders and the Purple Sage. I mean, like, how weird is that? You know, and then it wasn't until like my senior year of high school where the only other eligible black person guy that I could go to the prom with, because we had, in my class, there were 2 other black people, but they were imports. They brought them in from down south, like sort of like a...
exchange student.
Yeah. You know, I don't know, they were like sharecroppers or whatever, you know what I'm saying? So they brought them in, you know, the good white people took in 2 of them, you know, to get a good education up north. Anyway, so obviously it wasn't exactly in my social kind of situation. So I had to, you know, I was aligned with the other boy, you know, whose parents come from a long line of doctors and whatnot. And so we went to the prom, and he's actually the one that was introducing me to like black music and stuff like that.
Right.
You know, because he was part of Jack and Jill. I wasn't even part of Jack and Jill. You know? Because my parents were Jamaican, so they didn't care about Jack and Jill.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? They were like, what are these people doing? This is stupid.
Right.
But they think this is some sort of like, you know, debutantes. Where are they coming out to what? Yeah. My parents were kind of obnoxious.
Renee.
Yes.
Okay, so we're gonna, you know, we want you guys to continue this conversation, which is
You want to open it
amazing.
up to questions?
Well, yeah, I want to
Okay.
like, because we have so many different people in the room, you know, and a lot of artists, a lot of curators, some, you know, collectors. So let's, you know, just kind of like have a conversation, like a, you know, 5 to 10 minute, open that up.
Okay.
But like, you know, just finish, yeah. You know, if there's any more questions you guys want to ask each other, and then we can just like open.
We
it
had
up
a
for everyone
full
else.
conversation.
I
yesterday.
know, yeah.
We should have recorded it.
Right.
Right. And just put it up in front of the
Yeah.
So this is just
But
for
it was
you.
lovely. It was lovely.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah.
Is it a question or a statement that you're making?
It's a question. It's a question.
Okay, good.
The question is, I love this format and the sharing, but what is it like at artist to artist to have conversations in private?
What is it like?
What is it like artist to artist to have conversations in private between and just one-on-one without having to be observed and being observed, like in a setting like this? Like, what is? Is there a
you're saying, like, what,
you know?
we're like in a cage or something? It's like a zoo?
Right.
Yeah. So like, what's the difference between choosing to be in the cage and then kind of having to perform?
I don't know. I don't perceive it like that.
Okay.
And maybe because we talked yesterday
Yes,
too.
yeah. If we hadn't
Yeah.
talked yesterday, this
It would be weird.
It would just be weird.
Yeah, totally.
So like, but it also is weird to kind of like talk about some of the same things that we were sharing, but for the sake of public. So thinking of like what information can be useful to y'all that were not in the room with us to, and then, you know, I'm over here listening like, I heard that yesterday.
Exactly.
Right. So it's not, you know, I wouldn't say there's much of a difference between the spaces.
And being an artist is great because it's like because it's like intergenerational kind of thing. It's not like, you know, there's this and then there's that, and it's like the conversation is very smooth. You know what I'm saying? And he's the age of my youngest son.
Right.
You know, so
This was made in the year of my birth.
yeah.
Right.
So I mean, for me, that's like a beautiful thing too. You know, that there's not this what do you call it, like wall or whatever,
Right.
that you have in other professions. You know, where the older one becomes obsolete or something like that, and you know, or the younger one doesn't know shit or whatever. There was like yesterday. It was like a real exchange. You know, it's like, oh, I didn't know that. You know, and it was back and forth, and
Right.
and that's great. I love that. I mean.
As a person of Caribbean descent, how much of it did you felt being born in Jamaica? They gave you that kind of vigor and fight to continue and maintain and learn about your art within yourself and your culture. How much
Yeah, I
of
think,
Jamaica?
no, I think that was always there. It was always that sort of proud thing, and my parents were always super proud. You know what I'm saying? My parents like weren't affected. Like they were like white people. They're like they're trash. You know what I'm saying? Not all. I will say that. But if they were trash, they were trash, and they didn't give it any sort of second thought. They also look, the people in the eye. You know what I'm saying? Like my father, when he came here, he landed in Miami. Okay, and being Jamaican, he had a British passport. So all of his travel and accommodation was booked out of Jamaica. And his name was Lancelot Wilson Cox. Okay? So here he arrives in Miami. He has no idea about this apartheid that's going on, segregation, Jim Crow. He has no clue. Don't ask me how or why, but he has no clue. And maybe this is when ignorance is great to have. So he gets in, black cab driver picks him up. My father says, take me to the Fontainebleau Hotel. The black cab driver's like, what? So he has to argue with the black cab driver for like, I don't know, half an hour to get him to take him to the hotel because the black cab driver's like, you can't go to the Fontainebleau Hotel, blah, 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 right? My father gets to the Fontainebleau Hotel, walks through the front door, walks to the desk. Everybody's like, jaws are dropped and everything
Culture
else.
shock.
Exactly. And like, he's still not like vibing on what's going on. Goes to the desk. Okay, I'm Lancelot Cox. Where's my room? The guy behind the counter. He can't speak, you know what I'm saying? So he has to spend half an hour there arguing with them. And after about maybe half an hour, 45 minutes, they actually honored it. Okay, like making him like that stupid thing they would do in South Africa, making you kind of like weirdly honorary white, like lacking pigment and whatever, you know what I'm saying? Like an honorary Caucasian. Yeah, so like, because they made the fucking mistake. They assumed because he had a British passport, and he had a British passport, that he was Caucasian.
Also the last name.
Yeah, and the last name too.
Irish, Scottish.
Exactly.
How old were you when you actually came to?
My parents brought me, I was like a baby, like 6 months.
Ooh, wow.
But my parents did send me back to Jamaica.
They usually do.
Yeah, to boarding school. They sent me to boarding school there. Yeah. To Bishop's.
Thank you.
In Mandeville. When it was run by an English headmistress. Anyway, yeah.
I worked in Scarsdale, so that's like really interesting hearing that you grew up there, especially when you did. So that's wild. But
they were like liberal white people.
They're great. It was a fun time. I mean, liberal Jewish white people. It was a great time. I learned a lot, but I would never go back.
Well, that was my sentiment too. Like when I graduated, I wanted to have like a moving band there. Like I said, I would never go back. But lo and behold, I ended up moving to Scarsdale North, which is Chappaqua.
Oh, that's really nice.
Yeah, I know.
Chat
for my kids.
Right, that's really good up there. But I was wondering what your parents did, and like also what Elliott's parents did. And you grew up in Long Island, I know. So I just wondered.
My mother was a social worker, and my father was like an executive for a public service insurance company.
My mother was an RN, is now a nurse director, and my dad was a correction officer.
Yeah, I only asked because I was just wondering like what made it. Well, I don't know what would make somebody like live in Scarsdale, like how that works. I don't know why anybody
was the school.
Right. The school district is amazing, and I don't think about it in any weird way.
My parents died in Scarsdale. That's how much they loved it. You know what I'm saying?
I mean,
if you like once they arrived, they were never leaving.
And if you go there, it is a certain kind of pastoral, beautiful, out of the city place. Like it is a great place in that way. But I also, when you were talking, I like that like. Kind of like you don't speak from a black limit, which I think as a black American person who grows up and kind of knows about all these other things, can't express because their parents can't like get away from it. So like hearing you speak about it was just like an interesting way to look at how blackness can exist in a certain abstraction within these environments.
Right, and also too, the thing is like when you're from Jamaica, what? Everybody's black.
Everybody's black.
Right.
Yeah, it's like the doctor's black, the dentist is black, the lawyer is black. So you're not like, it's not like here where it's like you need certain services only white people.
No.
And
then I think that's also like a great thing about like how you worked in fashion because like it's also this thing where it's like
right.
It's not necessarily discriminatory, but if you're aware and you make it so that you're aware, like you did that time at dinner, then they isolate you.
Right.
And that's what happened to me when Maya Angelou died. And I was kind of beginning my career as an artist, and that's when I was like, I can't do this anymore. They said, who is Maya Angelou? And I was like, well, I guess she's your mammy because I know you know her voice. I didn't say it, but that was what it felt like in my head. I'm like, I know you know who she is, because who couldn't in this country? But yeah. So.
Well, also too, you should watch this New York Times thing, 1619. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, I have the book too.
Okay, yeah. Because, I mean, that one, like, duped me. I didn't know about it until I, like, kind of dove in there. Because I was like, oh, well, the Revolutionary War, wasn't that about taxes and whatnot with the Brits and whatnot? And they're like, no. So I was like, whoa. Because I thought, I was like, I know a lot. But it was like, I didn't know that, though.
Well, they teach us erasure. They don't teach us actual black history or history in this country.
No. Well, it would make them look bad. It's like that film Harriet. I was like, that was a joke. That was made for 2-year-olds. I was like really annoyed at that. I mean, at least, 12 years a slave, it showed, okay, white people, I'm sorry. And I mean, I'm married to somebody white, so I don't hate you. But I have to point out something's wrong with the DNA. Because it's like, you're going to whip somebody 500 times? You can't even whip them 500 times. You got to pass off your punishment to somebody else. You know what I'm saying? This summer I was in Belgium. I went to the Museum of Torture. I'm like, God damn. I said to my husband, how do people think about killing people like this? Make sketches and shit and develop things to rip nipples off, tongues off, penises off. And like, it's a thing. And then they have a museum about it too.
Right.
And it started during the Inquisition. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm sorry. I said, black people, at least we kill you. It's much more spontaneous. You know what I'm saying?
Oh my God.
We didn't drop no nuclear bombs on people and kill millions of people and have people having birth defects for generations to come and so on and so forth.
We also center joy and not necessarily like turmoil. So as a people, I think a lot of times when people are speaking about black people like center joy, I think a lot of times when, because you were just speaking about like this Museum of Torture, but a lot of times when we talk about like pre-societies, like pre-colonial societies, and we say that we're going to, what's that word they love to use? Make them more civilized. So when you civilize a people, it tends to be that like the people can't have joy, that you can't have the things, but unless we then like market them and then make them like music for everyone else. But like, so a lot of times when I look at blackness, I'm like, the joy and the happiness in those people, which is then taken as like a fear thing. It's like you're moving too quick, you're too jumpy, you're too excitable. So then I have to civilize you and then like remarket this as something.
But I mean, my thing is like, who's civilized?
Well, no one's
It's like, no, I'm saying no. I'm saying black
right.
people are far more civilized than white people, period. End of
And
story.
especially if you do center joy as opposed to turmoil and like capital as like your mode of operandi. So like,
joy was placed in us to be able to get through all of the negative situations.
I think it was, but I think also joy was just something that's naturally innate in us.
I believe that. I think
it's innate.
We always say statement that
Play too much.
we laugh instead of crying. It's part of our mechanism to cope.
But also, like in a similar way that like Renee's images work, where like you show yourself in power. I don't think that joy only exists because we are opposite oppression. I think joy also exists as we are opposite oppression.
Yes, if you are aware. And the point is always never let us become aware of our power. So in the Caribbean, we're taught all these different situations to be able to cope until we can get back to who we are. We have been dissected and separated from who we are. So to be able to exist and move over to an ancestry, especially Caribbean, because we don't know a lot about what happened here in the Americas. We know when we look around, we only see us.
Right, exactly.
Who has the shots, we only see us. Who moved the pig, we only see us. Who takes care of
The overseer was a half-breed mulatto.
Exactly.
So we still have part of us in
the art
him.
is not separate from the art. Everybody does art. Everybody dance. Everybody sing. Everybody wash. Everybody communicate. Here's the problem. That's something about culture, which we've been separated from, but it's innately in us. She is now showing what she is from who she is from legacy because of where she's from. We got dropped off a little quicker than you did in the Americas. We need to know our greatness is because of all of us, not because of one of us. No, that's not what he's saying. I understand that. The show itself.
No, what she's saying is because when they dropped the slave, first of all, they dropped off the most unruly slaves in Jamaica. Okay? They did. No, I mean, that's what they say. That's what, I mean, I was willing to go with that propaganda. I like that we were like the rebels. So they dropped us off first. They didn't want to be bothered with us.
Renee, let me just say something about the question of America. America is based on the myth that everyone can create their history. Now, if you confront white people with the history of what white people have done to black people, they are deprived of the right to create their history. And that's one of the fundamental contradictions of the American identity.
Wait, I don't know about that. Because the white people that came over here initially were thrown out of Europe.
I am not trying to support, I am not trying to apologize or support a white position. I'm merely pointing to a contradiction. I'm in complete support of questioning that contradiction. But every person coming to America suffers from the illusion that you can do away with history. That's the promise. Every immigrant coming up on the harbor.
Okay, so you're saying like the Italians not teaching their kids Italian and whatnot.
So what
or just a couple of words.
No. Look, obviously, this is not my place to have a long conversation about this, but I think one of the contradictions that we have to confront is that to get to Americans, we have to be able to explain that by being here, you have to own part of the history of this country. You cannot negate the history of this country simply by arriving on its shores. I agree. But
I think you got it like. I think we spoke to that limit of the history not being something that's taught in general in this country. So just like you don't have to teach gentrification. Well, you don't have to allow gentrification, right? Because you could teach something else that can abate it a bit. But if you don't do anything, then you're just allowing it. And again, anyone can live under this guise of there is no structure to behold, because you can just do whatever you want. And as long as you have power or might, have at it. That's what people come to America and they believe, and then that's what they receive. And so then when you come here as a white person who's not necessarily a slave, somebody who benefited purely from slavery in the way that they existed here during that time, you come into some kind of racial imaginary where you can just come into this country. I think black people do it too today. Black people who are not from America come here, and then they're like, oh, it's not so bad, or it's not whatever, or I don't benefit from your turmoil like white people do, and then in the same way they do as well, in different ways. I don't know, this thing can grow in so many different directions.
But I think the white people that came here initially, like I said earlier, they were basically thrown out of Europe. And they came here, they were peasants. They didn't have any education, they were not sophisticated, they didn't have food. Okay? That's why they came. Yeah.
A lot of lies. Christopher Columbus never actually landed, right?
And there were black people here before Christopher Columbus got here. But they don't want to teach you that. Yeah. They want to tell you that you all came over as slaves, that's all you ever did, and that's not the truth.
I just think,
exactly.
This is such a deep conversation, but I think we have to come back to what our prior commentator had just said about
what art is?
About accepting, not art, but accepting the American history. If you come here, you have to accept.
No, but for me, it's been about changing that American history. I want to create my own damn propaganda.
We should suspend our readings of history and think about the different narratives people bring to the narrative of what it is to be American or to be a citizen. So, as Devin was saying, the racial imaginary of this country is a big part of that. It divides and defines us, but it's also constituted with a lot of myths, right? And so we live simultaneously with the myth, and we know a lot of it's not true, but we work through the language of it. But what's not true is that you have to accept it. And so I want to challenge that is this idea that to be American and to kind of go along with kind of the capitalist structure or the organization of our neighborhoods or the ways in which we get our resources is to somehow accept that we had less back then, that they were poor, that they were in dire straits, and that we are in a sort of progressive narrative of more and more. And the more we get, the more we can give to those who did not get as much to start off with, right? So like we need to bust that convention, and that's what's so important about the work that's happening right here in this conversation. That's what's so generative about this, is that we're doing history right now. I'm a historian, but I don't even want to say that, right? Because it gives me a sort of marking and authority that I don't want. Like what I
but you
love
should
about
take
this.
Take
I
it.
know.
You don't have to apologize for nothing. You
I'm
know
not
what I'm saying?
apologizing.
Yeah.
I'm not
No, but I'm
apologizing.
saying you have to take
I'm
it.
saying that we have a sort of cultural norm of expertise and worship. So just as you guys are artists, we worship you as artists, and we kind of think you could do special things as artists. What you were just saying is we're all artists. We're all historians too, and we're all thinking, we're all critical. And so I want to pause, because I think that's what's so powerful about the Socratic method, right? When someone utters something, you pause, you ask a question about it. What is it about the idea that you have to accept the past and the sort of sacrifices of the past to become American? Is that true? No. I would suggest that it's not true, but it is part of one of the many strands of what people think it is to be an American, right?
But that's if you drank the Kool-Aid, baby.
You gotta wait till you get the light. I don't think it's acceptance. I don't need you to accept something you didn't do, but I need you to acknowledge it and acknowledge how that might.
I think we need to accept it. You look at the German example. Anybody coming.
Ooh, that's not a good example.
I just want to finish.
I just want to
finish this point because so the question has been like, do we accept it or change it? Do we accept it or change it? Do we accept it or change it? But think about this. Think about this. Why are we the only country that allows the losers' statues to stay up?
No, we don't.
You know, now we are, but in specific places, right? We're the only country that thinks that the losers still need to be honored after the fact of losing. And then many, and you can take it away, because I don't know if they're perceived as losers when you have Confederates that are ensconced in regalia and statues.
We celebrate because we haven't necessarily, as you say, accepted or acknowledged that they were losers. So like we're kind of this weird current. We're finally in a place to say that didn't work and that wasn't right.
That's what I'm saying is we used to think that
I think it worked.
So we used to think that the way to move forward was that we take the divisions of the society and we forgive, right? And we move forward and we have reconciliation and we forget. But that is a white supremacist. Forgetting is a white supremacist concept.
Absolutely.
And it is.
It is.
And how can you forget? I'm not saying most people have forgotten, but like it's part of the ideology that we just heard.
Exactly.
Just coming back to a couple points that were made, I thought were very interesting. Devin, you said something about the idea of like civilizing Africa when white folks went there to pillage the areas that were
the natural resources,
uncivilized. But like, what was replaced? What was the mechanism that was used? Violence, right? Violence in the name of civilization. Their religion in place of civilization, the lack of civilization, right? So then we come back to 2019. We're talking about the topics of acceptance or forgetting, and those are the two things we cannot do. And so when you relate it back to 500 years ago to what happened, and then now you think about it, even in relation to capitalism and gentrification, there's other ways. We don't have to accept it, nor do we have to move. We find other ways, and Elena had mentioned something in regards to creating history, and so that could be created through us, through our mouthpiece, through our actions, through the way we exist in our communities. And so, just to hit up on that.
The paradigm is shifting. We have to now rewrite history.
Thank you.
Period.
That's what I'm doing.
That's what you have to write. Everyone here in this should be writing and publishing.
Because they wrote their own damn history and then forced it down our throats. So I'm going to write my own history.
Yeah,
and in my history, I rule, okay?
I'd like to echo on what Tariq said. I'm African. I'm from Nigeria. And, when we talk about, the American culture and all of that, That is what we are here to talk about. But also remember that we are people that are emerging from the American culture, and that when we talk about civilization is, as the Europeans did not bring civilization to Africa.
No.
Africa was already civilized.
They had to have the Moors come up to the Iberian Peninsula to bring them toilets and like bags and forks and shit. They were fighting among themselves in mud. Okay?
The whole idea
they didn't have any damn civilization.
The whole idea of thinking that civilization came from Europe is wrong, because we already had philosophers in Africa before the European penetrated Africa. We already had intellectuals and writers and enlightened people already. And even as a matter of fact, most of the pyramid from Egypt was not basically the pyramid was not originally created in Egypt. There was already an appropriation from Africa, and so but the Nubians.
But also, remember in Mali, where did the Greeks go to get education? The Greeks went to Mali, they went to Timbuktu to get education.
So even what I'm trying to say is that, we had a lot of Arabic manuscript that said a lot about the Yorubas had their own manuscript. The Ivorian had their own manuscript. Everyone in Africa had their own history. And so
it was written too.
Different accounts. Everyone here, once we begin to write history, even we begin to write about what is happening tonight, we all have different accounts. And so, and exactly that's the way it happened. But also I want us to there are beautiful works here, and I know that there's so much for this book, for these artists to talk about. And really we should just focus and just be open-minded and have to hear what they have to say. And
but you know what? No, I love what's happening right now, because this doesn't happen enough. Right. Okay? Exactly.
Wherever you go, you understand that we all come from origin, all of us come from one same origin.
Exactly.
And place, which is fine. The European situation is fabulous. But you understand.
But they left the equator, they lost the pigment in their skin and their hair and everything in their eyes.
I just understand that, a room full of black people is very easy to get sidetracked by history and the debate of pride and all of these things. But I just wanted to make a comment quickly about joy. I think that was something that was brought up by Devin a few minutes ago, and I feel like that is something that is not meditated on enough, and I just think that Black joy is in fact something that has existed not as a survival mechanism and as a reality of a human experience, what it means to be human and what it means to know your name and know who you are. You know who you are because you know what it feels like to have joy. And if you did not know joy, you would not have resisted chains. And I think that that's something that in the narratives of Blackness, we focus so much on the chains, and it turns my stomach, to be honest. It turns my stomach, and the reason why I engage with Renée Cox and Elliott Jerome Brown is because there is a feeling in the work for me that is tapping into the joy of knowing the true self or respecting another's true self, that consent. That happens when you make space for another person's joy. And I'm talking about joy not as necessarily, clapping hands and dancing and excitement, although it is that as well. But I'm talking about the simple joy of existing without question existing in your potential, and knowing that innately, like as a baby that knows. And I think that
And
is
don't forget
innate.
about the self-love
Yes.
that we need to have.
The second comment that I wanted to make was about a black person growing up in suburbia. I grew up in suburbia. If we're talking about history, I grew up in a black suburbia that was very middle class outside of DC. And I honestly did not know the characters were white in the books that I was reading until I was 12. And we talk about progress in black history as if like it is an upward hill, but I learned about the Black Wall Street bombings in Oklahoma when I was 10.
Right.
That happened in the 20s or in the teens, the 19 teens. So what we're on is not a track of uphill. What we're on is a track, a literal round track. We're going around and around and around. And we may find ourselves in different places. It could be a spiral, but it isn't a simple progression. And I just wanted to make that point because I feel that point emerging here, and I just wanted to make that known. Like my dad wasn't the first, successful black man in his lineage. It's quite possible because I have family that are from Oklahoma. So I'm just letting that be known.
Yeah.
I would like to say that, a few things that have come up tonight, like including Deborah, it was kind of like growing up in Tampa, really nothing about art, but, okay, that was very interesting that she, the work of hers where the women are going through the spa and all that. But I want to say, this was 93, this piece, and for me, like thinking as Madonnas and their relationship to their baby or whatever, one of the things I wanted to say was like, what happened to that boy? Is he still so joyous as he was then and still so supported? Because this is a very unusual Madonna, because if you look at her hand that goes around the neck and all of that, it's like that kid is totally secure. And
he's really good.
No, actually, no, correction. You saw my younger one. No, my older one, this guy here is extremely successful. He's a senior VP of A&R at Island Records. He signed that kid, Shawn Mendes.
Right.
So
he's also, I
actually
wasn't asking. I wasn't asking.
Yeah. A sign of good parenting.
That's it, Every Mother's Day.
Yeah.
I didn't ask you whether he was successful. I asked you whether he was as joyful and free as he was.
No, he is. He is.
So, this picture came out a long time ago. And the idea that there's white people, black people, or whatever, I think it's so fucking tiresome. I'm so tired of it.
I know, but you didn't have to deal with that. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm saying it's not your, it's not your plight, my husband's white and he's French, and even his family, they get it. They feel a certain degree of guilt, and rightly so.
Okay,
we have to get together and do something about the climate, and we have to get together with you.
Well, we didn't mess up the climate. There's white people that messed up the climate. Because we didn't have nothing to do with our damn climate.
All right.
You take that picture and you still worry whether you're good enough.
Oh no, honey, I'm not worried about whether I'm good enough. I don't need anybody to validate me. I validate me, Renée Cox. Okay, don't get it twisted. Oh, hi.
I am going to respond to you. It's time to get over there.
I didn't totally that.
So
What you said.
This is
This is right.
God damn.
Our film.
I know, right? I'm like, wait, I gotta
Like you said, we're tired of this conversation, and I want to respond to that. I'm going to respond to that.
I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it.
All right.
Keep going.
There's something to be said about listening. No, you said it.
No, say what you have to say. Come on.
She's waiting. Just democratically.
I said, which is kind of like,
Oh my
can
goodness.
we see how great this is? Can we just assume that this is... Like,
But can we let Elliott have the floor for a moment, please? Thank you.
Accept that we did.
Okay. I'm going to take that because I saw the reaction in the room, and it is like, I work in corporate America, and I hear these underhanded opinions like, we shouldn't be talking about this. Why are we still dealing with race? While the inequities exist in this world against colored people, there is absolutely no way we can stop this conversation.
I'm from corporate America. Give me a good look.
She said she is. Look at me.
She's from corporate America, not you.
Oh my God.
Wait. You
You're
sound
very
like that
aggressive,
woman
and you need to
complaining
stop
about people
drinking.
barbecuing.
I didn't say that.
People say the things that they honestly need to say.
I just said I work in corporate America.
Oh, this is so
Wow.
genius. Gonna be starting a revolution.
It starts right here. On the line.
Anyway, there's just there's just way too many.
Call the police! Call the police! Call the cops! Call the cops! Did you ever think that it would come to this?
We're going there. Oh.
This is so genius.
Oh my. Oh man.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Doing the recording, I have to impose myself and say there's one person with the microphone. Everyone, please, this is a public forum.
One mic.
Okay, there's way too many inequities.
I'm like, wait a minute.
I can send you a link to the
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, Renée Cox Studio. Shut up! Sister Mary Elephant.
Right. Oh my God.
Cheech and Chong.
As I was saying, there's just way too many inequities in the world, too many terrible things, too many aggressions against black folks, people of color, however you want to say it, for us to think that the conversation cannot be had. The conversation needs to continue to happen until we get to a point, because I am hopeful that one day we won't have to have this conversation. I think we all would want not to have this conversation, but we're not even remotely there. We're just not.
You know, that baby is fucking
I've been waiting 20 minutes.
And that's what I love about this.
I've been waiting 20 minutes, and I'm grateful for the 20 minutes and just for the brief moment of attention. Adding to what, I don't know your name, the historian has added.
George.
So where did he go? Just adding to what the historian said. The black experience is something that can humble
There we go.
and create understanding for the challenges for the future, whether it be climate change or any other. And it's not the black Americans who voted the current regime into power. It's white people. White people have failed, and it is up to black people to actually bring their consciousness and their experience into the foreground. They are amongst the only people in this country. Hold on, that's my opinion. Hold on. Let me speak.
I have a mic.
Let me speak.
I already have a mic.
And then anyone can have the mic
I want to
after
say
me.
something.
Everyone can have the mic after me. Let me finish my point. I am counting on African Americans. I'm counting on the consciousness of their experience and their history. I'm not judging or qualifying or interpreting. Exactly. So that's not the position I'm taking up. The only thing that I'm saying is that the suppressed history, let me finish, and then the next person will speak. The suppressed history of this country needs to be visible to every white person for any progress to be possible. Everybody's. Everybody's.
Who doesn't do this every day?
Well, I do this to the extent that I can, and I'm sure you do, but there are a lot of people who don't.
I'm not sure you do. I think Elliott should respond.
I think, guys, I think this is an amazing discussion. Thank you, everybody, for participating. We continue to have these conversations because we have them in pockets, but when we have them like this, where we're all like together, we can actually talk. You know what I mean? So it's let's just respect each other. I think everyone has. Let's continue to respect each other and just let's lead with love.
No, it's fine. This has been very civilized.
This is just a discussion, okay? There's many, many more discussions to be had.
Guys, thank you. Oh, thank you, Elliott. Thank you, guys, for talking.
Thank you.
Everybody,
thank you. Thank you. This has been incredible. Wow.
Thank you, everybody, for being very present.
I love this. Love it.
Renee.